purpose of this tutorial is to look at the marginal cost of feed for milk production. This is a key metric on all dairies because increasing marginal milk production is a key component of many herd management strategies on a dairy. So whether we're looking at putting fans in the dairy or milking 3 times a day or improving our reproductive efficiency, all of these have economic value in terms of how much increases in milk production do we see per cow per day. In most cases, for cows to increase in milk production requires a higher consumption of feed. This is what we call marginal feed. And what we are interested in is estimating the cost of this marginal increase in feed. The cost of this marginal feed intake can then be used to estimate the value of interventions where improved milk yield is in play. Now there are 3 basic ways that one can calculate marginal feed cost of milk production. Perhaps the simplest is to look at the difference in milking cow ration costs versus dry cow ration costs, taking a difference between those and dividing that by the average milk yield. Note in this case that we're using the dry cow ration cost as an estimate of the maintenance cost of a cow. Another is to perform a weighted regression on milk yields and ration costs for pens of cows. So this is at play when we have herds that have multiple pens. We have information on what their feed costs are per pen and what their milk production performance has been. What we can do is perform a weighted regression on that data, and the slope of the regression line will be an estimate of the marginal feed cost per pound of milk. Now we use a weighted regression because the pens often differ in terms of the number of cows that are in the various groups. We can even include the dry cows with 0 milk production as part of that data set. And then the third method is to use the actual annual accrual total feed expenditures that one might see on a profit loss statement or some of the other financial sheets that are commonly calculated on dairies for both the milking and dry cows. So this is the total feed that was perhaps purchased or made within a period of time, often a year, for both the milking and dry cows, so all the adult cows. And then we adjust that figure for maintenance by looking at what's the total number of average cows in the herd times an estimate of maintenance costs. Again, we use the dry cow ration cost for this. And then we divide that by the total milk sold. And this will then give you a cost per pound of milk. Now what we've done is we've created a visual analytic that allows you to look at these 3 methods easily and also to look at some other aspects of the formulation. So here on this analytic, I have over here on the left is where one can enter in the milk price. What's the dry cow ration cost? In this case, I have it at $1.80, and of course, one can move these sliders to whatever figures you want. And then what the milk level is of the herd. In this case, we have it at 80 pounds. I'll move this back up to $1.80, $1.90. The program estimates what the dry matter intake would be based on NRC, and then one dials in what the ration cost is. So based on what you put in for the ration cost, the program will then calculate what the marginal cost per hundredweight is. So in this case, the marginal cost per hundredweight of marginal milk would be $6.50 or 0.065 cents per pound of milk. This is perhaps the simplest way to come up with an estimate. The second method is where we perform a weighted regression. Down here I have a table for a herd that had different groups of cows, and we knew what their milk performance was. We knew what their feed intake ration costs were, and we also knew the number of cows in each group. Down here we had 0 cows or 0 milk levels for the dry cows and the number of cows that were in that group. And up in the graph you see a plot of those points. And what this program does is it fits a weighted regression line and tells you then what the slope of that line is. One can also look at one can enter data for that herd, for a new herd, by just simply clicking on the enter data, and then when you put in data here, you can look back at the graphs and estimate it for a herd. Now the third method that I mentioned is where we look at the actual accrual feed costs for a herd. So one enters in the total number of hundredweights that are sold, perhaps on an annual basis for a herd, the average number of milk cows per day that are in the herd. One could get that from DHI data. An estimate of the dry cow ration cost, in this case I have it at $1.80, and the total feed cost for the milking herd from your accrual record. So this would be the total expenditure of feeds actually used during which period of time you sold these hundredweights of milk. What the program does is estimates a reduction in the feed cost due to maintenance based on the average number of cows and the maintenance cost per cow, and divides then that difference by the total milk sold to give you a marginal feed cost. So from these three methods, one can come up with a pretty good estimate of the marginal feed cost associated with making an additional pound of milk. And what this allows you to do then is to look at other aspects. So if we click on ration here, this allows us to compare an alternative ration strategy. So here, this screen here will allow one to look at a different level of milk production and a different ration and compare that to the current strategy that is typified on the left to the alternative. So in this example, we can see that we have an alternative ration which would cost a lot less, going from 710 down to 463, but milk yield would be only at 60 pounds of milk, and there would be a lower dry matter intake. The table below calculates some common metrics that are used in the industry. So we have the purported milk responses for the two different systems, so 80 pounds over here, 60 pounds over here, the milk revenue, the feed cost, the cost per pound of dry matter, the feed cost per hundredweight, and the profit per hundredweight. And when you look at some of these metrics here, the cost per pound of dry matter, 11 cents, feed cost per hundredweight, 7.72, profit per hundredweight, 11.25, it would appear that the alternative, the lower milk yield, would be the strategy of choice. And yet when we look at income over feed costs, we see that it is greatly reduced compared to the current strategy. So the teaching tool aspect of this analytic is to show how sometimes common ratio metrics that are used by the industry can lead to illusionary strategies. In other words, in this case, because you produce fewer hundredweights of milk on the alternative strategy, you end up making less income over feed costs for that cow. And of course, all of these are changeable in terms of what strategies you want to look at and what ration costs you want to pursue and compare. It also allows you to look at the use of products on a herd. Once we know what that marginal cost of feed is, we can look at the value of a marginal profit, a product. In this case, I'm looking at a product that increases milk yield by 10 pounds. There's a variation, 3 pounds. Maybe we get that from data published in the literature, what the cost of the product is, the estimated increase in dry matter intake, and it works out a simple little partial budget, and then tells you what is the rate of return on product cost or the rate of return on product cost and feed cost, and then also what's the probability of failure. In other words, what's the probability of response that is below break even, and this is based on the variation that one enters in the up here as the product. So as we increase that variation, make it where the response is more variable, then the risk of a response being below break even increases. So this is a wonderful analytic to look at this very important issue of marginal feed costs. If you have any questions or comments, please give me a call or send me an email at galligan@vet.upenn.edu. Thank you.